Residential schools, an institution that was forced upon us as a white man's solution to assimilate us into English culture. Their mandate, kill the Indian in the child. This included removing the savage, as they saw us, out of the Indian and attempting to destroy our communities, our families, and our traditional way of life. Our culture was to be destroyed. But no one knew, not our parents, our grandparents, or their parents before them, what was really happening in residential schools. It is thought that residential schools are something from our past, something that has no bearing on how we live today. But did you know the last residential school only closed in 1996? The effects of residential schools have been passed down from generation to generation, and without intervention, without continued healing, the effects of residential schools will continue to be intergenerational. We as people have to learn that what happened here was not our fault. We can change our future. We can become the people we once were. We can heal. Through the work of Intertribal Health Authority and the programs specifically designed towards Indian residential school trauma, created by First Nations House of Healing, many of our people have had the opportunity to address and heal from this trauma. The healing work must continue. They tried to destroy our way of life, and because of inflicted trauma endured at Indian residential schools, our lives have been changed forever. Now it's up to us to heal our pain and reclaim that which was taken from us.
Both of my parents went to residential school. My father went for 11 years and my mother went for 2 years. And so I've been greatly impacted by their experience in residential school. And in many respects, our home was like a residential school because of my parents' experience. Plus, they also passed on some of the impacts of colonization to myself and my siblings as well.
The reason why my grandparents didn't want to let me go, because my grandparents' youngest child, she was so ill that my grandfather had to pack her to the boat, which was an open boat that took them to Sechelt from Siam, and within a few days she had passed away. My grandmother used to say she died of a broken heart being in a residential school, because she was never ever away from the community, never away from her parents.
I am a residential school survivor, and as was my late father and my mother were residential school survivors, and my older siblings. I have 10 brothers and 4 sisters. And when I got married to my husband, I took my siblings in so they wouldn't have to go to the residential school.
When I came from residential school, I was very angry. And I never really thought I'd reach this age to tell you the truth, because of how angry I was and how violent I was as a young man.
My parents went to residential school, and my grandmother went to residential school, so I'd be like third generation. So on top of my traumas, I carry my parents' trauma, carry my grandmother's trauma. So to try to sort it all out and to know what was mine, have to come to an Aboriginal run program like this, where somebody really understands the impact of the residential school and the intergenerational, to help me to make sense of something that was just so horrific.
When I think about my own personal experience, the first thing that comes to mind is shame. The feeling of not being good enough, being unwanted, being unlovable, and being unworthy. And both of my parents learned that extremely well in residential school.
I've learned a lot. I feel I've gained more. I'm not there as an elder to teach. I'm there as a support and sharing my culture, sharing some of the history. And I've gotten a better understanding of why our communities are the way they are today as a result of the residential school legacy.
The First Nations House of Healing program was developed to address the physical, sexual, emotional, and spiritual abuse suffered by our Indian residential school survivors and their families.
The work that is happening with First Nations House of Healing is very holistic grounded in traditional ways of being. We really utilize elders as really the foundation of returning to who we're supposed to be. There's been so many gifts from this work, but also knowing that there's so much tragedy and so much pain that I really believe that the work has just begun. It took us about 12 years to gain trust for First Nations clients to come through our doors. I think that people are starting to want to share their stories because of the common experience payments that came out, and with our survivors doing IAPs, that many families and communities are just starting to realize the impacts it's had on our communities with our people who went away to residential school.
The First Nations House of Healing program, I can't say enough about it because it's really helped me identify who I am, where I come from, and really helped me to address the sexual abuse, physical, emotional, and mental abuse that I suffered as a child. So it really helped me to become who I am today, and a better mother, better wife, better person, better sister.
My position here with First Nations House Healing is both as program advisor and probably the primary facilitator of, I'm going to say, most of the programs here at First Nations House of Healing, which include sexual abuse programs for men and for women, shame and abandonment, grief and loss, intergenerational impacts at residential school are most of the ones that I deliver here. The one thing I do know about shame today is we pass it on to our children unknowingly. And so that is one of the big areas that I was impacted by, was the feeling of not being good enough, feeling less than.
And it was a secret that I held for 50 years or more. I came to sit as an elder at one of the healing groups and was drawn by the honesty, and the secrets that I had came forward in me on that day. And many tears started to flow, and it was very, very cleansing, and began a more softer walk for me, I guess you could say.
What this program here at First Nations House of Healing allowed me to do was to feel what it felt like to not be, to feel like I'm a mistake, that I'm not supposed to be here. Oh, it's so complex what shame does. And the thing that helped me to do that here was the medicine wheel, and the importance of having to go to the emotional part of it and to feel it and to walk through the fire and to recognize what my triggers were and to make sense of something that didn't make any sense to me.
I've been an elder here for the sexual abuse program just for women. And one of the things I've come to realize in the last 2 days is how important this program is. Because in this group, there's a woman that's been out there living in Vancouver, working on her sexual abuse 5 days a week for 8 months, and has not got to the core of the issue until she came here. She absolutely looks beautiful and absolutely loves herself today. So these programs are very important for our people. The intergenerational program, sexual abuse just for women and for men, and the shame program and the anger program. And a lot of them are just now finding about these programs, and they're going to close them down. We have a 68-year-old woman for the first time talking about her sexual abuse, breaking the silence. This is what our communities need.
They helped me a lot. They helped me work on my self-worth and to look at myself in a positive way. They helped me look at shame and abandonment, just a lot of issues that I had in my childhood, and got to see that it wasn't my fault for what I went through. It's just something I went through.
For me, it jump-started sobriety for me. I never ever thought that I would be able to achieve something like that, but by addressing some of that unresolved trauma and all of those unresolved issues that I was carrying around with me for my whole life, I was able to let it go, and I was able to see life, in a different way.
We as people must address the impacts of Indian residential school trauma. Please support the programs that provide opportunities to heal the impacts of Indian residential schools.
One of the key things I really want to say, we need these programs for our people, our young people. A lot of our young people don't even know what happened in residential schools. They don't know why their parents were so crazy. I came out of there, I didn't know anything. I didn't know how to be a wife. I didn't know how to be a mother. I didn't know any of those things. We're just starting the healing. We are. And they want to cut the funding.
I think we need to continue with the First Nations House of Healing because I think it's just scratched the surface of some of the healing that needs to happen with our families and with our communities.
I want my grandchildren to be, I see them today and I could see that they're healthier. I wish that I could have been the kind of mother that I am as a grandmother today, because I'm present today, and I'm present because of programs like this that have helped me to be able to see my own gifts because I couldn't see it before.
I generally love my life today. And before I took the programs, I didn't even want to live, right? And I pretended to be happy when I really wasn't.
The government has to face the fact that they were the ones that caused the residential school to be opened, and a lot of the people that were running it who are supposed to be religious and believe in their God totally, and they were the ones that were abusing us. And the government has to admit that we have to be helped before we can make that next step into wellness. Because without a program like this, it's just going to be ongoing.
Our people were healthy years ago, before contact. And a lot of our people have forgotten how to take care of themselves.
Please, please don't close these programs down. We're just starting as a people. We're just starting. Right now, we have more children in care than there was in residential schools. That's sad. That can't continue. We need to make a difference. People that come here do go out there and make a difference. Yes, not all of them make it, but a majority of them do. We need to make a difference and be there for our children.
These programs address much, much, much more than just the trauma of Indian residential school.
To see people come in and they're so down on themselves, and to walk away with their head held up and feel good about themselves and about one another in that circle. It just needs to continue. It really concerns me that they tell me this is it. There'll be no more programs after this. We need to keep it going. It's so important. A lot more work to do. Yeah.